President Trump takes substantial steps towards ending the war in Ukraine. The Democratic Party is now on life support as Trump announces $5,000 DOGE dividends back to the American taxpayer. President Trump verbally backhands the governor of Maine after she refuses to stop letting men compete against women in women's sports. Kash Patel gets confirmed as the new director of the FBI by the U.S. Senate. And our favorite MSNBC host, Reid, gets the boot. All this and more on today's episode of Week 5 of the Trump Presidential Rewind.
It's useless.
I'm working on time.
MEX.
President Trump absolutely cooked the governor of Maine, Janet Mills, this week with this exchange after she continues to defy his executive order banning men from competing against women in women's sports. Just take a look at this.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with the state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
First off, why is this a thing that people want men to compete against women in women's sports? After decades of women complaining that they don't have representation in money-making spaces like the world of sports, it just completely gets overhauled by these radical leftists who want to allow men to dominate women in women's sports. I just don't get it. Second off, by doing this, now that Trump has already passed an executive order stating that this is no longer going to be allowed by federal law, she is blatantly obstructing and breaking the law. And third, this is just utterly disrespectful to any person, Democrat, Republican, to speak this way to the man holding the highest office in the land. And finally, there needs to be an end to government officials just being untouchable because there are just simply too many legal loopholes to jump through to indict their asses. That is what led to this current climate of multimillionaire politicians that sell their souls to the highest bidder and just do whatever they say, including making threats of violence against their political opponents without any accountability and in direct opposition to what the American people vote for, and then continue to break the law even after they've been thoroughly exposed for the grifters and taxpayer thieves that they are. Did you notice that she immediately said, "I'll see you in court," as soon as Trump mentioned that if she didn't stop allowing men to compete against women, that he was going to yank their federal funding? Just imagine that level of entitlement necessary to act that way in front of the president of the United States and all 49 of the other elected governors sitting in that room. So just to get this straight, she is going to sue the president of the United States because she doesn't want to follow the law requiring that states stop allowing men to compete against women in women's sports. You can't make this shit up. It seems like anywhere where there's an elected official that belongs to the Democrat Party, they're pushing this shit. And I don't understand why. And it's about to come to an end. No more are these people just going to blatantly disregard lawful executive orders and acts passed by Congress just because they don't like them. Because they're no longer going to be shielded by the mainstream media and the judicial activists that accept their bribe money stolen from the American taxpayer. The governor of Maine is just the latest example in a long line of Democratic officials suing the president and his administration because they don't like to follow the law. This is called martyring, and this is what sociopathic narcissists do to stake claim to their victimhood, to try and manipulate and contort the truth to keep their victims in compliance and loyal to them. But according to the Democratic Party and their House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, this is a winning strategy, even though their polling numbers are down to 21%. They think that this is going to be their golden ticket to defeating Trump. Take a look.
We are actually winning in court. The Trump administration is losing. We are partnering on at least 79 different lawsuits that have been brought related to about 35 different illegal or unconstitutional executive orders. And the Trump administration continues to lose in court after court after court. And that effort will, of course, be on. The House Republicans, they've been on the run. They are feeling the pressure of the fact that their policies are deeply unpopular with the American people. And we've seen that play out this past week all across the country. And Democrats are going to continue to make clear that we will stand against the effort to end Medicaid as we know it, stand against the effort to detonate Social Security or Medicare, certainly stand against the effort to undermine veterans' benefits or nutritional assistance to children and families.
So it's certainly true that President Trump's poll numbers are not in a great place, although they're higher than they ever were in his first term. But congressional Republicans polling is about 40%. Congressional Democrats polling is at about 20%. So that's an issue for you.
So yeah, there you have it. The Democrats think that they're winning with a 21% congressional approval rating. Let me just break this down for you. Those numbers that you heard Jake Tapper just spout out about is evident to the fact the average American is completely opposed to the establishment members of our government, to the people that they know are stealing their money. And for the Democrats to be claiming that they're winning against Trump by suing him in over 79 different lawsuits all across the country, even though their polling numbers show them with a 21% approval rating, just goes to show you that they haven't learned a single thing. These people are either stupid or Trump has just so thoroughly exposed the Democratic Party for what it is that I don't see how they ever come back. And hey, I'm not complaining. I hope that they keep on this track because they will never win another presidential election. That's for damn sure. What you're seeing are the last desperate actions of a dying party. All that's actually left of this party are radical nihilists who hate this country. That's it. Nobody is voting for that. And they're about to find out what happens when you try your damnedest to destroy our country, what happens after you steal trillions of dollars of taxpayer money and attempt to steal elections and break the law, despite the American electorate overwhelmingly voting against you and your destructive policies. The hammer isn't just on its way, it's here. Moving on. President Trump and Elon Musk announced DOGE dividends this week to try and repay us some of the taxpayer money that they caught the deep state red-handed pocketing. This is welcome news to the average American taxpayer like you and I, who work hard to put food on our table for our families and don't just have a bottomless pit of taxpayer money to rummage through and launder into our personal accounts through a vast network of corrupt deep state nonprofits and NGOs. They mentioned giving a $5,000 sum to every single American taxpayer family after DOGE has successfully saved us upwards of $128 billion of already congressionally allocated money to start the healing process of Americans' distrust in our current government. I guarantee you that Trump would not have even mentioned this if he hadn't already decided that this is the direction that he wanted to go. This is pretty much a done deal. Keep in mind that these are simply funds that are already allocated to be spent by Congress, so it's already in the fiscal budget and is currently controlled by the executive branch. Congress doesn't even need to approve these disbursements. And of course, Democrats have continued to learn nothing as they're openly coming out against it.
But there could be a big, beautiful payoff for the American people if DOGE is successful. Musk is mulling $5,000 DOGE dividend checks funded by the savings from his Department of Government Efficiency. 47 seems on board, but some Democrats aren't sold.
There's even under consideration a new concept where we give 20% of the DOGE savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt because the numbers are incredible, Elon. So many billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions, and we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens.
We are not in the business of giving out money. And honestly, I don't know what $5,000 will do for you.
Now, Harold, that woman, Jasmine Crockett, praised the stimmy checks back in the day. And now she says, what are you going to do with $5,000?
I mean, are you kidding me? You're not in the business of giving out money. We have shoveled trillions of dollars at this point out the door to foreign adversaries, while our corrupt politicians took kickbacks from it. Now, I'm not going to bore you by taking you down the long laundry list of the money that your government has stolen from you, but if you want to see it for yourself, I'll leave a link to the DOGE website in the description for you to take a look at later on. But trust me when I say that the US government is definitely in the business of giving out money. They just aren't in the business of giving out money to you and the tens of millions of other American taxpayers that pay income taxes. The fact that she just sloughed off $5,000 like it's pocket change just tells you everything that you need to know. These people have no idea what $5,000 is worth to the average American. This just solidifies the fact that these people are completely out of touch and have nothing in common with you, and see us as nothing more than just peasants who are standing in between them and their next golden jet ski with spinning rims on it. They have absolutely no concept of the average American family and what their ridiculous spending has added to our daily burden. These people are so absolutely corrupt and against against you, that they're actually going to go against Trump on attempting to give you back the money that they stole. You really can't make this up. And I'm by no means complaining. I mean, I hope that they keep on this stupid track and keep saying stuff like this on national television, just to make sure that they're saying it louder for the people in the back, that your politicians hate you and are so hell-bent on stealing your money that they'll even vote against giving it back to you instead of sending it overseas for, I don't know, sex changes for illegal immigrant walruses in Cambodia. I'll tell you what I'd do with $5,000, and it sure as hell wouldn't be funding your leftist anti-Christian wet dreams all over the world. And I hope that the Democrats choose this as their hill to die on. It's just ridiculous. Moving on. Now, folks, I have somewhat of a confession to make. It's a little secret that you may not be aware of. I'm black. And guess what? I've been black for a very long time, pretty much ever since I could remember, now that I think about it. And guess what else? After my parents died at a very young age, I grew up in foster care, in the American heartland, surrounded by conservatives with lighter skin tones than mine. And according to networks like ABC, CNN, MSNBC, the usual suspects, the Midwest is a white supremacist hellscape filled with Nazis that are foaming at the mouth with hatred, bigotry, and racism. But I can tell you with 100% anecdotal certainty that I have never once in my entire life been denied an opportunity based on the color of my skin. If anything, I've been handed more opportunities than most people because of the color of my skin. There's no denying that in the past, this country was guilty of perpetrating some of the worst crimes imaginable against minorities. And I'm not here to pretend that that's not a matter of historic record. But this ongoing myth that white people and white conservatives are just terrible, rabid racists that hate blacks and other minorities solely based on the color of their skin and are secretly working behind the scenes somehow to try and undermine the rights of these minorities is just a sick and twisted distortion of reality. Folks, we have had a black president of the United States. We are allowed to vote. And if you make good decisions, don't commit crimes, and educate yourself, there is absolutely nothing standing in the way of you achieving whatever you want to achieve in this country. This sort of victimhood mentality is why we see blacks killing other blacks en masse in the inner city, and why only 16% of the population is responsible for 50% of violent crime in this country. And I can tell you that 16% are not white supremacist, racist Trump supporters that are doing it. And if you really get down to the brass tacks here, it was a bunch of old, stuffy, rich white guys that freed the slaves, that desegregated the school system, that ended Jim Crow, that passed laws that allow women the right to vote, that saved Europe from anti-Semitic annihilation by Nazi Germany in World War II. And at this point, I am wholeheartedly convinced that systemic racism in America is dead and buried. And it is just simply a lie that is kept alive by a very small, weak-minded group of people that rely on pushing it to make a profit. Because the only racists that are left are women like Joy Reid of MSNBC. And thank God that she was fired today. For years now, this woman has gotten up on her soapbox and has been handed a mainstream television platform to spew some of the most sadistic and disgusting racist lies and propaganda that I think anybody in mainstream television has been allowed to tell on air. And thankfully, she was axed today by MSNBC because their ratings have finally reached an all-time low. And if you're unfamiliar with deranged Reid and her anti-white racist rants, check out what Joy Reid had to say about white people and black conservatives, and you tell me if she should have kept her job.
Let's not be trying to play games with these kinds of small things to try to pull us into a direction. All that matters in this election, and I genuinely mean this, all that matters in this election, the only thing that matters in this election is keeping Donald Trump and Project 2025 out of power, keeping that insane ideology of white Christian nationalism and white supremacy and white male Christian dominance out of power.
They want white supremacy by ventriloquist effect. There is a black mouth moving, but a white idea through the running on the runway of the tongue of a figure who justifies and legitimates the white supremacist practices.
They're voting on race. They're voting on this idea of an invasion of brown people over the border. The idea that they can't get whatever job they want. A black person got it, therefore drive all the blacks out of the colleges, get rid of DEI. That is what they're voting on. They're just voting specifically on racial animus at this stage. It isn't about economics.
Now, I'm not going to put you through any more of that, and I apologize for putting you through what I already have. But those are just a couple of examples of some of the things that she said on her program that was just canceled. And it turns out nobody wants to listen to that shit anymore. I don't think that people who think like her actually understand how racist and how disgusting that sounds to somebody who doesn't walk around all day concerned about everybody else's skin color. Normal people don't think that way, but apparently Joy Reid does. And thank goodness, once again, that her show will no longer be foisted on the American public. And hopefully there's more of these radical, racist, anti-white commentators that'll follow her right out the door. Now let's move on. Kash Patel was finally confirmed on Thursday by the U.S. Senate with a 51-49 vote in the affirmative. This is great news for our country, and Kash is essentially the last infinity stone in the Trump cabinet's infinity gauntlet. A lot of people aren't aware of the magnitude of Kash's connections within these networks of power and corruption that have been destroying our country and running it into the ground. Kash Patel is a former national security advisor to the Secretary of Defense, was a defense attorney for Navy SEALs charged with war crimes, has established connections with the majority of the Republican Congress, and has held a top-secret clearance for a majority of his career. This is a man who knows the ins and outs of the deep state and has likely been building his cases against the big players since before Trump ran for re-election, behind this dogpile of corruption since President Trump's first term. I'm telling you right now, he is not playing around, and he's going to take swift action against these people. Senator Mitch McConnell, possibly one of the most corrupt Republican politicians in history, surprised everyone after he voted in the affirmative for Kash Patel and sealed his confirmation. And shortly afterward, he announced his retirement. Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska continue to vote against Trump's cabinet picks, and they're going to join the Democrats in 2026 when they get steamrolled in the midterms. I know we all can't wait to see that play out. The truth is that you can pretty much guarantee that the Republicans in Congress that continue to defy Trump's mandate are part of the corruption that is being exposed. You can identify the establishment shills that send our people overseas to fight and die for them to line their pockets with taxpayer money by going to a website called libertyscore.conservativereview.com. They're not a sponsor, but they're a great resource to find out what your politicians really are up to on the Hill. You can literally search up any member of Congress and check out their voting record for free, and it is constantly updated with each bill that hits the floor, ensuring that you can stay up to date on all your elected officials' voting decisions. It's time to get rid of these people and do away with the absurd spending and corruption that they engage in because of platitudes that keep getting them elected, and actually take a look at what they're doing to our country by examining their voting record. If enough people are made aware of tools like this and others, maybe we can actually get these swamp creatures out of office and maybe they can learn how to code. But anyway, back to Kash Patel. Kash's confirmation is not only a monumental victory for our movement, but it is a guarantee of complete transparency on behalf of our federal government. Despite what Joy Reid has to say about Trump and him being a white Christian nationalist, whatever that means, Kash Patel's parents fled communism in Uganda, and now Trump made him the leader of the FBI. He was the puzzle piece necessary to ending the corruption in our justice system. And for the first time since its inception, the FBI won't be used to indict political opponents and whistleblowers and blackmail our politicians into furthering corruption, but it will actually be used to go after bad guys, including terrorists, cartels, and corrupt politicians that knowingly steal trillions of dollars of taxpayer money. Like I said in last week's Rewind, you're going to see a massive shift in the Democratic Party's narrative in the media. They're going to shift from Trump and Elon being bad guys for exposing the fraud and corruption that they've committed to Trump and the Justice Department going after their political opponents. But that just simply is not the case. The fact that they went after Trump for 7 years on made-up charges that made absolutely no sense to anyone except for Trump deranged idiots in the media, and came up with not even as much as a night in jail and a phony conviction by an obviously corrupt judge by the name of Juan Merchan, whose daughter's nonprofit literally received $15 million from furthering the lawfare against President Trump, just shows you that the man is about as clean as you can get when a massive system like the DOJ comes after you. Probably the most investigated individual in history, and they couldn't even come up with so much as a parking ticket. On the other hand, the crimes that these deep state goblins have committed just in the last 4 years are enough to put some of them away for life. Rooting out these smooth-brained troglodytes and making an example out of them is the only way to ensure that this large-scale corruption never happens again. It may sound kind of harsh, but think about it. If you and I funded coup d'etats on domestic soil, possibly funded multiple assassination attempts against the winner of the US presidential election, stole trillions of dollars of taxpayer money, and allowed millions of people to flood into our country, and then gave a lot of the money that we stole to them, and allowed veterans and their families to live on the streets, you and I would be looking at centuries of time in prison. Pawns don't have morals, they have marching orders, and these people march their globalist orders with gusto. Bottom line is, they hate you and they hate our country, and did their damnedest to destroy it. They deserve every ounce of justice that Kash Patel can squeeze out of them. It's safe to say that with Kash Patel getting confirmed, you're going to see a lot of indictments and RICO crackdowns in the coming years. So buckle up, it's about to get crazy. Moving on. The Trump administration made several moves to end the war in Ukraine this week, including talks with Russian officials and meetings with Zelensky. This is what Secretary of State Marco Rubio had to say about his talks with Zelensky.
When President Trump posts that President Zelensky is a dictator without elections, what are you thinking?
I think President Trump is very upset at President Zelensky, and in some cases, and rightfully so. Look, number one, Joe Biden had frustrations with Zelensky. People shouldn't forget it. There are newspaper articles out there about how he cursed at him in a phone call because Zelensky, instead of saying thank you for all your help, is immediately out there messaging what we're not doing or what he's not getting. I think the second thing is, frankly, I was personally very upset because we had a conversation with President Zelensky, the vice president and I, three of us, and we discussed this issue about the mineral rights, and we explained to them, look, we want to be in a joint venture with you, not because we're trying to steal from your country, but because we think that's actually a security guarantee. If we're your partner in an important economic endeavor, we get to get paid back some of the money the taxpayers have given, close to $200 billion. And it also, now we have a vested interest in the security of Ukraine. And he said, sure, we want to do this deal. It makes all the sense in the world. The only thing is I need to run it through my legislative process. They have to approve it. I read 2 days later that Zelensky's out there saying, I rejected the deal. I told him, no way, that we're not doing that. Well, that's not what happened in that meeting. So you start to get upset by somebody. We're trying to help these guys. One of the points that the president made in his messaging is not that we don't care about Ukraine, but Ukraine is on another continent. You know, it doesn't directly impact the daily lives of Americans. We care about it because it has implications for our allies and ultimately for the world. There should be some level of gratitude here about this. And when you don't see it and you see him out there accusing the president of living in a world of disinformation, that's very counterproductive. And I don't need to explain to you or anybody else, President Trump's not the kind of person that's going to sit there and take that. He's very transparent. He's going to tell you exactly how he feels. And he sent a message that he's not going to get gamed here. He's willing to work on peace because he cares about Ukraine. And he hopes Zelensky will be a partner in that and not someone who's out there putting this sort of counter messaging to try to, hustle us in that regard. That's not going to be productive here.
Now, it's safe to say that Zelensky is a man stuck between a very big rock and a very hard place. And you have to keep in mind that the Ukrainian gravy train was supposed to never stop. Trump was supposed to get his head blown off, Kamala Harris was supposed to win the election, and the CIA was just going to continue to shovel money over there, keep their regime change puppet in place, and continue to absolutely rape the American taxpayer, and further weaken our economy. And those are the facts. I hope that you don't watch my videos in hopes of getting some sort of watered down and politically correct version of the events, and I try to just give it to you straight. And this is exactly what's happening right now. It's safe to say that Zelensky is what you would call a twist. He's a two-faced bastard that's going to say one thing in negotiations with our officials, and then another when he gets back to home base. The Trump administration has been highlighting the fact that European countries have also been funding the war in Ukraine, but the difference is they have assurances, ensuring that they get repaid for their war subsidies with interest, while the US is out all that money. I honestly believe that Zelensky is a dead man walking at this point. He is no longer useful to the globalists running the war machine, and Trump has no use for him either. So he's doing nothing more than just saying what he thinks that he has to say in order to stay alive. This is nothing more than a massive rug pull on behalf of the globalists, and I don't see how he and Ukraine get out of this without making a deal with President Trump. That's the only card that he has left at this point to play. This is yet another stark reminder of how corrupt the government and globalist deep state really is. And by my estimation, Zelensky is the next domino to fall in the massive lie and shameful war brought on by the warhawks in Washington and the United Nations globalists that line their pockets with blood money from these pointless wars while they send the youngest and brightest to die. It truly is sick, and I hope Trump can finally bring an end to it and stop this needless adversarial relationship between the United States and Russia. All this war has done has further unified Russia and China against us and weakened our posture on the world stage. We gain absolutely nothing as citizens paying for the destruction of other countries, creating and sustaining unnecessary enemies all over the globe, including another major nuclear superpower like Russia. Trump ran on the promise of peace, and that is exactly what he and his administration are pushing for. And one of two things is going to happen. Either Zelensky is going to agree to our terms, or Trump is going to back back out of negotiations, and the Europeans can deal with it. And that doesn't look very good for Ukraine. The bottom line is Europe wants us to keep funding this war while they make a profit at the American taxpayers' expense, and Trump wants Ukraine to agree that from now on, if we're going to protect them, they're going to guarantee us a return on that investment. And the mineral rights deal that his team proposed is the most common sense plan that you could come up with. Whatever deal is reached by all three parties engaged in this negotiation effort cannot give an upper hand to Putin, but it also can't allow the European Union and NATO to continue to decimate our pocketbooks. And I believe that this deal is what accomplishes both. Folks, the mainstream media is dying, and it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. I enjoy making these videos, and I'm super stoked that people actually like my content. And I just want to say thank you for supporting me on this journey and continuing to motivate me to make these videos. There is so much happening on the daily with this administration that it's almost impossible to keep up with it and cover it all in just 15 or 20 minutes. And I think it would be awesome to get to a place with my following that would allow me to just do live streams on Sundays as opposed to editing and uploading videos. This would allow me to connect with my followers and engage with you guys on a personal level and answer questions in real time. But before I get to a point where I can do that, I've got to grow my following base and make sure that I have enough people that are actually going to watch those live streams. So if you've made it this far into the video and you like what you saw so far, please make sure to like this video, leave a comment, and make sure to follow me on Rumble, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and follow me on Facebook and X for real-time updates. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week for week 6 of the Trump Presidential Rewind.
Some members of Congress in red districts are facing pushback from voters in town halls. We know that Americans voted for you on the immigration and the economy, but these voters say they're angry and frustrated by these firings. They don't like the work of Elon Musk and these other actions. What do you say to them?
Who do you work for?
I work for ABC News, sir.
Who?
ABC News.
No wonder.